Town Clerk, can we get a roll call, please?
Mayor Friedel,
Present.
Vice Mayor Toth,
Present.
Councilmember Earl,
Here.
Councilmember Calavianakis,
Here.
Councilmember Watts,
Here.
Councilmember McMahon, Councilmember Skillicorn.
Thank you. Rachel?
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming out. As you know, this is the first of 2 work sessions for today. First up is a work study session for the rules of procedure. I just wanted to kind of share a couple of details. Yesterday, we shared out a very, very working draft. I've had a couple people ask about, is this a final? How did this come to? I said, these are just some suggestions that have come via staff, that have come via some discussion with different council members, but it is by no means done. It still is very much an active working document that I hope we can engage in today with some clarifications, directions of what you like, what you don't like, what you want to add to it, what you want to take out of it. All of it's on the table. So that is what this body is for today, is to discuss this, give direction to staff of what you would like to see, and then we will take it and create another updated version to be shared out for further direction, and or once it's done, once we get to a point where everyone feels like it represents this, then it will come back for council adoption. But I want to make sure that everybody knows it's still very much a working opportunity. That's what today is for. We've budgeted about an hour to an hour and a half most. Hour and a half is kind of drop dead, only because we'll pause. That way everybody can grab a bite, and then we'll get going at the 1 o'clock for the CIP. So I'll give a little heads up, maybe between 11:30, 11:45, just to kind of remind everyone. In the meantime, everyone should have a copy of the version. You'll note that there are edits made in blue and there are edits made in red. The blue is just to indicate that these kind of originated from staff, so that Bev or I can kind of chime in on what the theory or thought process was behind them. Those that are in red have come in through different council members or different conversations, just to kind of, again, give some context. Do we want to just start from page 1 and kind of work through? Does that sound okay with everybody? Anybody have any questions or anything before we get going? Okay. All right. Bev and I are going to be frantically taking notes, so give us a little leeway there if possible. All right, so hopping off right at the bottom, so 1.5, we just wanted to formalize the role of the mayor and the seating. We've done it in practice for a long time, but it's not necessarily documented anywhere, so we just felt like it made sense to do that. I didn't even make it through 1.
I know, sorry. Just for clarification, I'm going to go back up to 1.4 where it says 3/4 vote. That becomes something other than either a 5 or a 6. Which is it?
You have to round up in the event that there's, so if 5 doesn't pass the threshold, then you go up to 6. That
So it
makes
is
sense.
6 then? I mean, when you take 3/4 of 7,
Yep, it would be 6.
you have to have 6 people.
Mayor, council member, that's correct.
Can't we just make it clear that it's 6,
Yes.
not 5?
We could.
Okay. Then I'd like to see it be definitive as opposed to got to figure it out.
Instead of having to do the math.
I guess the only drawback to that would be if you don't have 7 council members present and you're trying to take a vote. So for example, if there's only 5 of you, right, because 2 are absent and you're still trying to suspend strict adherence to the rules, and you can't possibly get 6, right, because no one would be there, so.
Fair enough. Okay. I'm good, thank you.
Mayor, I heard the phone. I'm not sure if Councilmember McMahon is with us now. Councilmember McMahon?
Yes.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. What may I please ask? Thank you. I apologize for being late, everybody. Can I please ask what section we were just talking about in the code?
Sure, no problem. I'm glad you were able to join us. Councilmember Watts was just talking about 1.4, so we just kicked off the conversation. So we were just talking about 1.4 and then 1.5, which is the seating of the council. So.
Okay, thank you.
You got it. 1.6, again, kind of highlights the rotation of the vice mayor role based on the formula that we use for that process. This has been, again, it's been sort of documented offline, but it's not necessarily in the rules of procedure. Is that right, Bev?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a. It says here that the rotation of the vice mayor is based on the order of the highest number. So I understand that when you first get elected, you know, this is going to be determined at every single 2-year election, but the existing members will still be in their same rotation, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate the clarity.
Do I just talk, or do I wait to be recognized?
Mayor, would you like me to recognize, or would you like to still use?
That would be
process?
fine. Go
Okay.
ahead.
I mean, I think Alan, you're next, and then Gail.
One flaw with this change I see is that if someone is elected in the primary election, and let's say there's 2 people who don't make it through, in the general election, they will receive more votes than the person that won in the primary. So this, I would prefer the old language because this would put that person who has more overwhelming support at a disadvantage.
I'm not sure there is old language, but I'm not going to swear to that and say we don't have it.
Well, I think officially, I mean, it was up to the mayor. It was at their discretion. So, I mean, it may not, because it was vague, it was up to the mayor's discretion.
Gotcha.
Can you reword it? so
That's
that
what I
it
was saying.
comes
Maybe
that
we can
way?
look at how to potentially reword that to
Okay.
make it more consistent.
And then it doesn't say the length of time. Right now, I think we're doing 8 months, are we? Is it 8 months?
I think it's like,
would-
yeah, I think it's 8 or 9
Should we have that in
months.
there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can add that.
7 months.
Oh,
I
7
think the
months?
rotation is 7 months.
Okay.
Okay. Uh,
I thought the rotation was 7 months.
We'll double check what our, because we have it all documented of when the date rotations occur. So we'll confirm whether it's 7 or 8 and make sure that that's reflected.
If you did 8 months, that's equal to the 24?
No. 7.
You're asking me to math. Any other thoughts? Okay to move on? There's some, you'll note in here, there's some cleanup items that we put in here where there's reference to, you know, things being submitted 48 hours or 72 hours in advance. Those timelines were actually relevant when we had Thursday council meetings, and I don't know if some of you may remember those days. Way back in the day, we used to have meetings on Thursdays. So having something due 48 hours in advance meant Tuesday, no big deal. Well, now because we have meetings on Tuesdays, putting things in 48 hours in advance means Sunday. So that doesn't make a lot of sense operationally. So we've tried to amend those to either reflect the Thursday before the meeting or an appropriate amount of time so that it doesn't fall on a weekend. So that's what you see in 2.1. Moving down to 2.3, we just put a little language cleanup in there, that's all.
It is 8 months. It's in our code.
Okay. Moving on, so these are the definitions, and I think there was a question about whether we should remove newspaper. It's just a definition of what it is, but we can certainly do that if you'd prefer.
Well, question.
Go ahead, Peggy.
Thank you. I mean, I can't see you guys, so I appreciate your patience.
Sure, no problem.
I think, isn't the legislature looking at this and possibly changing how we're going to be able to post notices, et cetera? And some may still be in newspapers. So maybe we should leave this right now and then come back to it if the legislature changes that.
I think this is just the definition of newspaper. I don't think it has anything to do with the
okay.
ordinance. Yeah, these are just definitions.
I know, but if the ordinance keeps newspaper, we may need to change it to their description.
I'm going to do my best. Say, I think you're up, Helen. Say, based on my order, I'm trying
yeah,
to follow
just
the order.
semantics. I don't know. I'd have to actually look at what the statute, if anyone has it memorized, what the definition for public posting is. You know, I believe it is. I think they say newspaper, but I just want to make sure it's exactly, because I don't know. I mean, is it? I mean, is this the actual definition in the statute? A weekly, or daily, or weekly paid publication, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Is that the actual language from the statute?
I don't know, but we can probably look real quick.
The easiest change to suggest is just going to be whatever the statute ends up being, we make that amendment.
Yeah,
That's it.
But, and politically, it's unlikely they're going to change.
Yes. Councilman Watts?
Just a suggestion, but I think going back up to 2.5, I want to make sure that the rules of procedures are the same date that we're talking about. So 9/6/23, that we don't either proceed or digress on which rules we're referencing.
To my knowledge, that's the most recent update.
Right. And the other thing is that I want to make sure that it's clear that general circulation of a newspaper can include something like the Arizona Republic or the Mesa Tribune, any paper that is circulated within the town. It is not exclusive to the Independent.
Correct.
Gotcha, thank you.
Vice Mayor, sorry.
You're good.
I'm not good at this. I don't run these meetings.
I just wanted to voice that I would prefer for the definition to be removed, and it's coming from a stance that so our newspaper or any other town newspaper, as an example, those subscriptions are really low lately. Newspapers are kind of becoming a secondary way that people receive their information. As technology increases and as people look to their phone for their morning news, I think it would be more helpful for us to move away from I'm trying to say from having it in our code. It's not saying that we wouldn't put it in a newspaper. It's saying that we're not binding ourselves to that, is
Sure.
what I'm trying to get at.
Sure, and I think
The
there,
statute, we have to comply to the statute if it's in our rules or not.
Oh.
That's what she's saying, which is an interesting point.
Speaking of statute, however, in the Arizona state law, I don't see anything that requires you to put it in a newspaper.
so that's actually, as we move through, you'll find, especially where it talks about commissions and committees and where we advertise for openings. Currently, it says we will put it in the newspaper, but there's nothing that says we have to. You're right. You're absolutely right. So if we want to pull that process out, we certainly can. If we want to leave the definition, we can. If we don't, that's fine too. It's, like I said, this isn't really a directional element. This is just the definition. So,
Got it. And I did, to Councilmember Skillicorn's point, I did pull up the Arizona statute, and it's, for anyone who wanted to look it up, it's 38-431.02, notice of meetings. There's nothing that says like you have to put it in a newspaper. So, yep.
there you go.
I just want to concur that I'd like it taken out as well,
Okay,
unless we're told we have to have it in by the state.
sure. We can do that. All right. Any other thoughts? Moving on. Notice we just articulated when the calendar would be adopted. Again, it's been practiced that we did traditionally do it in December, but we just wanted to make sure that it was out there and noted. I don't have any other changes noted on here till we get to minutes of meetings. Anything that anybody else wants to stop and look at? All right. All right, Bev, I might have you talk about this one a little bit, but there's a couple cleanup, again, just as a few distinctions where we talk about verbatim minutes, because that is what we do. We don't do a summary any longer. And then this is where we've talked about our comment cards and how we handle those. Do you want to talk about that, Bev, real quick?
Currently, I believe that the comment cards are submitted electronically. And we note whether they're for or against, and we give the mayor the count, as to what that is. And then we'll announce it, and those comment cards are not read. They're just strictly, it's a summary of how many we received and what that actual count was.
Is there a reason that we don't identify along with their position who they are, much like we do when somebody comes to the podium?
There is an efficiency question there. Sometimes we have upwards of 50 or 60 of them, if not more. And to be quite fair, sometimes they do not have accurate information, i.e., I believe we've received comment cards from Donald Duck, Mickey Mouse, etc.
And they voted how?
I-
Thank you.
May I speak?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
So my request is that we eliminate these online comment cards altogether. People can email us their questions, and it would save time for the staff. They don't have to pull it all together. And people could come and in person have their comments. My understanding is this came into effect during COVID, and COVID is over.
Comment.
Councilmember Skillicorn?
Yeah.
Hang on just one second, Councilmember.
I'm curious of how much time it takes to make that little PDF. I mean, is it time consuming or is it more automated?
It's time consuming. It depends on how many we receive. And then I believe there was a case where we had duplications from people that submit them. And sometimes it's the same person who decides they need to send in another comment multiple times.
Okay.
And so it does take some time. I would say maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Oh, wow. So I like seeing the comments that come in. I think it's helpful. If we're trying to speed up meetings, I don't know if we need to announce, we've got 6 for, 5 against, I don't know if we need to have, if our intention is to speed up meetings, which I've heard that people want our meetings to end earlier. That is an interesting point, though, if we're wasting staff time on it. I want to say wasting, it's the wrong word. If we're using a lot of staff time. I wonder if, I don't see Mike, he might be in the back. If there's a way to automate that, if there's just a simpler way to automate that, or if we use, a different way to capture that, like, I don't want to say a certain web search engine's form, but something, we have a form that automatically puts them together. Maybe that's easier way of doing it. And I do like seeing them. I like I do read through them every meeting. It's important. But I don't know if, we need to be talking about them or announcing that, and especially spending, that's 3 hours, a month compiling that stuff. I guess it could add up, so.
Well, and to kind of add one more layer to that point, if we're going to continue to take them, you'll see in here where we suggest moving the deadline up so that there's more time to allow for the collation of that and getting them to you with enough time for you to actually review them. Right now the cutoff's at 3 o'clock, and that's just not enough time to turn around for a 5:30 meeting.
I like the idea of just having the people email the council members.
I'm going to make a comment, please. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Comment cards are extremely important. Many people send them in. There are a lot of people that are unable to attend the meeting, but they want to make a public comment, so they send in a card. It is easy for them. It's easily accessible, and everybody gets the cards. I know that people sometimes individually send emails, but we don't all get those. So I prefer to keep this system in place so that all the people that rely on it, that medical reason or otherwise, they can't come to the meeting, they get to make a comment. It's uniform. It's not. It's done by, neutrally by the town clerk, and then we see them. This is our residents' voices about things on the agenda, that they get to comment on. And we should hear them, and it should be neutral. Because I'm concerned if it's like just going to an email, it's not going to go to all our emails. And that happens all the time.
So,
And it's going to be a violation of open meeting laws if it does. I don't know.
what?
You know, as long as it's a one-way communication, it's okay. But, Vice Mayor?
Sorry. We do have our mayor and council at FH. That's an email that goes to the mayor and the entire council. And I will note that many of the people who fill out comment cards already utilize that, where they'll send their comment card to us in an email and then it's also at the meeting. So I do believe that this is what Councilmember Earl suggests is the more efficient way of doing this. People who can't attend the meeting, if they're out of town, if they have a medical concern, they can still send their email, make sure their voice is heard. This does encourage, I will say, this doesn't necessarily save time in the council meeting. It would, because we'd be encouraging people that can to come in person and have their voice heard. However, this saves staff time, and I also agree, I mean, COVID's over. I think just kind of on accident, there's actually lots of municipalities and organizations who have kind of accidentally kept their COVID policies, and I think it's good to go back and clean that up because it will, unfortunately, the comment cards are very inefficient in that we get our email and then we also get the comment card and then we have our Daffy Duck and then we have the people who said, send this as a comment card and everybody copy and pasted the same paragraph. It's you see it a lot in the state legislature too. If anyone's done the request to speak thing, you'll see like 100 comments that are just the exact same 2 sentences over and over again. So it's just inefficient. This is a way to make sure people's voices are heard and that it's also like actually their voice that we're hearing.
I have a comment, please.
Just one second. Just one second, council member. We have one more speaker.
Oh, where did he go? Is Alan still here? Oh, he's hiding? Okay. No, Alan, I was just saying, the talk about having it sent to our emails, it sounds like it would fulfill what you were talking about, electronically getting to everyone so it wouldn't have to have the staff have extra work. If we do the mayor council at fountainhillsaz.com or .gov.
I was hoping not to get into a 45-minute debate on what I do.
Okay, I'll stop.
But frankly, if this, let's say there is 50 comment cards or comments on 5 different items for one evening, right? And that means we're getting 50 emails. I'd much rather look at them in a form or that PDF that we currently are using than 50 individual emails. That would be my only preference on that. I just think it'd be easier for us to see it in some sort of summary. Again, I think there might be a form that we could do and have it in a very readable way and things like that. And then also we could save some staff time.
I agree. Surprise, Alan, I agree. I like the format it's in. I think it's easy. We all get the very same thing. And even though, yes, there's a mayor council email, some people may choose not to use that and send in a separate email, and we won't see that. And in addition, since COVID, you know, COVID's not even in this picture. And this has been something that has been for years, and it's worked really good, regardless of it was a result of COVID or not. I don't want the word COVID tainting this because it serves a completely different purpose. It is a forum for our residents and people to make online comments. I like its uniformity. I like how it's presented. And I like that we all get the exact same thing. And we're not compiling each 50 different emails, stacking them up and bringing them into the council meeting, because that's just going to add for more paperwork and confusion. So I would appreciate it if we would please keep this in 3.8. Thank you.
Thank you. Brenda's got her light on, and then, yeah, we'll just take a quick consensus.
Thank you. My take on this is if they fill out the comment card and it comes directly to mayor and council, I'd have no problem with that. If it would save staff time. The PDF version is very efficient because they're all in front of you. So either or sounds okay with me, but just to get rid of the comment cards, I would definitely be against because it's a bright line rule. I'm for less regulations in our town, and I am for more participation from the general population. And so this would just take away one avenue of people that it's been a tradition. I mean, for some of the more controversial projects like Sandor, we've literally had hundreds of people, and that's how they know how to weigh in. So if we just eliminate that, a lot of people are going to be disgruntled, and they're going to be like, why don't you want to hear from the public? I think it just makes the council look bad.
Councilman Watts?
Oh, I thought Councilman, so Mike's not going to like this, but fundamentally, that form is a PDF fillable form. And you could very easily tabulate the yes or no's, for or against, and the form. So you could total those, make it easier on staff to make a summary, to do a summary, and still send the results of all of that by each individual submission to the council. So I think if we looked at a way to automate it and make it easier, would make sense.
All right, with that in mind, it sounds like there is a body of four that would like to keep it. Taking that and assuming that, and that's based on my count here, unless I'm wrong. I believe I heard Councilmember Kalvinakis, Watts, Skillicorn, and McMahon would prefer to keep it. Correct. No, I don't think so. I think the only rule change I would actually ask for is, right now, the deadline, again, is 3 o'clock. I would like to look at moving that to give more staff time and also more time for you guys to review them. If you got 50 documents in your email at 4 o'clock before a 5:30 meeting, that's probably not enough time for you guys to effectively review them. So the question we've thrown out is noon. Does noon make sense? Does close of business on Monday or the close of business the day before the meeting make sense? But we would like to encourage that if we're going to keep the process.
Probably noon, wouldn't you think?
I guess that's Bev. Would noon be preferable?
The day before would be better. So if they had a deadline of the day before, end of business day.
Well, that Sunday's not a business day.
Monday.
Monday.
The meetings are on Tuesday, so that the end of Monday, they'd have to have them submitted.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Still got to have a submit. So, okay.
Yes, end of day Monday.
All right.
With the caveat that we look at automating that process.
Yes. All right. Moving on. Okay. Moving on. Stop me if there's other things that you wanted to notice. Again, there's some cleanup in there about just some definitions and some different cleanup. We moved something from 24 hours to the Thursday prior for agenda preparation so that there's clarity there. So under 4.2, moving on.
That's the one I'd like a little
Okay, sure.
clarification on that.
All right, so we're moving to 4.2, B1 and 2. I think you wanted to talk about B2, is that right? Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Basically, here, additional council members may direct the town. For the future agenda items, so you're changing this to that we have to know that before the meeting? If I'm trying to understand that it's a lot there.
Proposing agenda item is to contact the town. The way it's written, yeah, so Bev and I were talking about the process of future agenda items and how we're probably not agendizing them in the correct process. Do you want to cover that? Okay.
You guys are utilizing this space on the agenda to just take and give direction to staff at the meeting. The public has no notification of what you're going to be asking. This agenda item has been used differently in the past. We had the same issues where council members were proposing ideas and getting their support, but then we would agendize them so that the public could see who was proposing it, who was the support, what the item was, and then they would be discussing that item at that meeting to see whether or not there was support from the entire council, if there should be more staff time involved in whatever the matter might be. It's just for
Question?
discussion.
Councilmember McMahon, go ahead.
I guess I'm not understanding why we need to have council members' names in the agenda item. I mean, we're in the process. Is this at the end of the meeting where we're making suggestions for the next agenda? I'm trying to understand where this is in the process.
Yes, it is at that agenda item at the end of the meeting.
Okay.
That's,
And
it's
so
already there.
the information is taken down by the town manager that this is the agenda item that's going to be suggested, et cetera. But I guess I'm missing why council members' names as well as it needs to be on that. Is that going to come back to us in some way? Or am I totally missing it?
I like keeping it the way it was.
If I may, I think Gail, that's a salient question. Is this going to change the timing of when we request a future agenda item? Would that be yes or no?
Yes. So essentially, what we're doing is we're kind of skipping over the opportunity for you, for the rest of the body to say, no, I don't want to talk about this. And I'm going to just use an example that we've had recently. We had the sign code brought back, right? We brought the sign code back, and ideally, it would have been agendized that says, Councilmember Earl, with the support of Councilmember A and B, requested further discussion on the sign code process. And if we bring it back and you guys say, you know what, this is not something we want the staff focusing on right now, then we move on. There is a question of whether we should be taking each item and coming back and either agendizing it so the public can know that we're going to talk about it, and then if we say yes, then we can agendize it for further direction. It does, so it adds another process, another layer.
So would she have to make the request before the council meeting that day
No, it would still happen at the council, at the meeting.
at the future business?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
But then everybody has to vote on it, not just three of us agreeing that we want it on there? So
at
you're
the
changing
following
that.
meeting. Mm-hmm.
So then it takes that much longer.
Exactly.
I don't like it.
Slightly different take on the second line where it says council members may direct. I think that should be shall direct.
Okay.
I think it should be may, because we may or we may not. We don't have to. Some of us make those recommendations and some don't, may.
Let me add one other layer. Oops, actually, unless, Vice Mayor, you had something you wanted to add to the conversation.
I'll let you go first.
Okay. You'll note in here that there was a suggestion to remove next available meeting, and staff suggests leaving it. I know there's a little bit of contention there as to why. Essentially, from an operational perspective, if you request something on Tuesday night for the next meeting, which is literally 2 weeks from that day, there's not enough time to get it done usually. If there's any type of staff involvement on that item, we basically drop everything and focus on that because it has to go out to the mayor for review the following Tuesday. So we basically have 3 days to get that item prepared, which is usually why it's not on the directly next agenda. It's typically we skip the next one, then we get it onto the following one, or the available one. And generally it can be difficult based on the staff time involved, depending on the item.
I have a comment.
Just a second, Councilmember. Go ahead, Councilman Watts.
Thank you.
I understand, I still like the shall, but I understand the available component. It makes sense that you don't get jammed up, but there has to be some definitive time within the next 2 to 3 meetings, something has to give somewhere. So shall and something more specific to available
Okay,
would make some sense to me.
sure, we can look at that.
Am I on?
Yes, ma'am, go
Rachel,
ahead.
I agree with available because you don't, another component of this is mayor and staff have a lot of things waiting to be put on agenda. And it may not fit on the next agenda or even the next one. So I think giving staff and mayor the leeway to figure out what the agendas are and not having to absolutely put this particular item or suggestion on the next agenda gives them a lot more leeway in balancing out the agenda as well. So I'm for leaving the word available in there.
Then leave available in there, but say no later than.
Right, yeah, we can kind of quantify
Right.
it within the next 3 regularly scheduled meetings or something of that nature. I think that that's reasonable. Vice Mayor?
I would agree with that. It was me. I was the one that wanted to kill available. It's mostly because I want that timeline tightened up, because a previous administration, I'll say, there were a couple items that just never happened still. And this was after we changed it to next available. And so if we're able to do something that tightens it up, that says, no, it's going to be on an agenda. There's no getting around it. There's not. I just feel like for the sake of future councils, we got to tighten that up. So that's why I wanted to do that. As for the paragraph, I also am not a huge fan of it. I understand where the concern lies, though. In previous meetings, when we've had someone suggest something for an agenda item and it becomes a huge discussion, it really can't be that, but I don't necessarily think that comes from a change in the rules of procedure. I think it just needs to come from enforcement, that this isn't discussion, this is, I suggest my thing for the agenda or someone else does. We get at least 2 people to nod their head, and then it would start the process where it needs to get on the next available agenda. I don't think a code change is needed for enforcing that.
Okay. Any other thoughts? We'll move on. Okay, moving on. C2, well, say 1 has been changed to 8 calendar days because of just the dates. And then C2, the agenda items shall be submitted. It's for all types of meetings, whether this calls out specifically work sessions, but it's all for all meetings. So it's kind of redundant. All right. Next page. Again, these are just
No,
sort of.
wait, I have a comment, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Are we on E, agenda packets and timing?
Nope, not there yet.
Okay, thanks.
Let's see. Actually, we're just making our way there. So we had a couple little cleanup items on there.
Okay,
And
thank
then,
you.
what are your thoughts on E, Councilmember?
Well, I see agenda packets here in all meetings, and they get submitted to council the day before. And packets may be supplemented later under special circumstances. I'm wondering, because I'm concerned about documents being submitted late or at the time of the council meeting, which we do have a rule against that. I'm wondering if we should say something that, for transparency purposes and to avoid surprises or other things, and publication of notice of agenda, and so the public might be able to speak on it, that we can't produce documents or photos or other materials during a council meeting. And maybe that's not where this one belongs, but under supplements or whatever, I think we need to address that. And if this isn't the proper place for that, then we'll pick a proper place for it.
Council member, if I may, I believe what you're referring to would be under 4.4.
Okay, probably. Okay, thank you.
Okay, why don't we move, unless anybody has anything, why don't we move to 4.4 then, and to stay on that topic? So again, this is where we talk about things being needed 24 hours prior to the council meeting. Documents and handouts must be presented to the town clerk no later than 24 hours prior.
Right.
Handouts submitted after that will not be disseminated. This actually was really intended for some of our presenters and other people that like to bring and share information and documents and things like that, that kind of show up and start handing stuff out. We'll continue to put digital copies of them on the screen like we've done in the past so that you guys have those available for review.
Okay. But you know how a couple times, unfortunately, it's interrupted the meeting where all of a sudden a paper is produced or something. All council members haven't had the opportunity. The public don't know about it and haven't had the opportunity to weigh in if it's significant. So I just want to not, not be able to have something in here that we're not able to just hand it out at council again. And I'm not diminishing that. And also, when removal of items from the agenda, when do we get notice of that? When something is all of a sudden removed? And I know sometimes you can't help that because I know Mayor announced a removal at the last meeting of an agenda item. But if something's removed before then, are we going to get notice or how's that going to work?
Yes, if anything is removed that we need to amend the agenda and repost it, then we would reshare that and let let the council have the updated amended version.
And we've done that on a couple of occasions where we've removed something and reposted the agenda.
We have, yeah. And sometimes it's just because there's an
Okay.
error
Yeah.
or a time is changed or something of that nature.
Or there could be a bill that was decided and we have an agenda item, so we want to remove it.
Correct. But that being said, yes, sometimes
Right.
it does happen at the 11th hour and it's announced at the beginning of the meeting.
Right. That, I guess as an example for the last meeting, there was an agenda item removed, and I don't know why it was removed. So I'm saying, as far as letting council know that it's being removed, I mean, why is it being removed?
I'm not-
Again, that's
I'm
up to
not-
the chair,
We're
yeah.
not in the right section of the code for that either.
No.
This is just for handouts. Yeah, it's not relevant to the conversation.
Councilwoman Earl.
Thank you. So if I understand correctly, it's already on the agenda, which the agenda is already out to the people. And if a council member wants to even get something electronic, and I guess we can talk about when I submitted stuff for the signs, I would prefer to say it's at 12 noon that day as opposed to the day prior, because you're not changing the agenda or anything. It's just, if somebody wanted to have a handout, we let you know by noon that day.
Okay. Councilwoman?
Thank you. And I'm not sure if this needs to be codified, but just for a rule of thumb here, this only applies to materials and handouts. This would not apply to motions to amend. I just want to make sure that's clear to everybody in the public. That a complicated motion to amend can be submitted even at the time of council meeting. Okay, thank you.
Well, I like the 24 hours because the town clerk's got to deal with all that stuff. So I want to give her time to do her job effectively as well. So unless anybody else has a complaint about that, I think the 24 hours is good.
When you're given something electronically, does that, what is it you're saying, like you would have to?
Any documents that are going to be handed out need to be given to the town
They're
clerk
handed out?
24 hours before the meeting.
I say, do we want to get a consensus on which one you guys prefer? 24.
The 24 hours is okay with me.
Okay. Moving on. So it used to be that we would put hard copies on your desk, and it's, digital copies are probably just a little more efficient, that's all. No problem. No problem. Then we have the order of business. We move into 5. Again, there's kind of some cleanup language in there.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. I don't know if Aaron's there or not,
He is.
but, okay. The order of business, and maybe, again, this is not the right place to discuss this, but the order of business shall be contained in the agenda. My concern is, and I'm going to use an example, is that at one of the meetings, we were talking about 5G, and then a motion, or not even really a motion, was made to add in waiver of attorney-client privilege. Now, that was added in, and I made my comments at that meeting because it wasn't agendized, it wasn't noticed to the public, and it wasn't contained in the agenda. So I have concerns moving forward that that's going to happen again, because that's a pretty significant agenda item that really wasn't thoroughly discussed, and it wasn't contained in the agenda. And I think that we need to have some language that we can't just add an agenda item like that, and that's not properly noticed, or the subject matter of the agenda item being discussed.
Respectfully, that motion had to do with the
Aaron.
agenda. Thank you.
I'm asking Aaron, please.
Thank you. Respectfully, so that motion had to do with the agenda item at hand. So just like with any other motion, if you were to say,
I'm asking Aaron the question.
respectfully, this session is for discussion, and what I am
Excuse me,
getting
I
at
addressed my
is that
question to
your
Aaron.
comment,
One at a time, please.
I addressed my question to
your
Aaron,
comment
please.
is not germane to the work session. We have a limited amount of time, and I would like to respectfully request that we move on to what's actually in the rules of procedure. If we're to discuss things that are not on the agenda, that would be a violation of the same thing that you seem to be concerned about a prior meeting.
Aaron?
I think it's the same issue of any motion that is on the table, you have the ability to make an amendment to the motion, just like whether it's a building issue, whether it's a code issue, anything. So
Yeah.
we're always able to make motions and amendments.
That's the thing, is that what we're talking about right now is we're talking about the order that things appear on the agenda, not the substance of any item of the agenda. So we're
Okay.
strictly talking about order.
move
If
it
there's
down.
substance, hold on, if there's substance that we need to discuss, then that's something that you talk about with respect to each agenda item that's on the agenda. If it's related to the item on the agenda, you can always change a motion or amend a motion. If it's something that's not reasonably related to what's on the agenda, we shouldn't be making a motion. And so I think we do need to be careful about that in the future. That being said, do I think that there was a major legal issue with what happened last time? No. So that's it. You're welcome.
I'm noting the time right now is 11:50, so I wanted to see how we'd like to continue, if you want to keep going sort of page by page, or if we want to jump to some of the more substantial elements of this, some of the bigger changes.
I think we jump to the substantial elements.
Okay. We can do that too. Well, and I'll say, if there's something of note that you noted when you reviewed this that you want to talk about, let me know. But otherwise, I think it would behoove us to move to, I'm going to say, item C, which is the summary, and it indicates limiting comments from the mayor and council members to 1 minute. That was a suggestion that was put in there. I wanted to make sure that everybody was comfortable with that.
Can we make it 2 minutes? Or is that too much, people?
Yeah, I thought, Jerry, I thought you already did a ruling on that, and we decided 2 minutes.
So these are suggestions by council members of changes to the rules, and one of those suggestions is to limit it to 1 minute, because respectfully, the 2 minutes isn't being enforced. And this is a significant time spender in our meetings. Very often we're repeating all the same things that if everybody went to the art festival and each one of us talks about the art festival, we're now 15 minutes into a council meeting that has issues that we need to deal with. And so respectfully, I think the summary reports are being, for lack of a better word, abused. And I would like to clean that up.
Comment, Mayor?
Just one moment, Councilwoman.
Yeah, no, I just think that this might, again, might be a solution in search of a problem. I don't think we've had any problems with council reports. As a matter of fact, the people that I speak to, they appreciate our council reports and want to know what we've been doing. And I think that the mayor's solution to cut it from 3 to 2 was very reasonable. I told him at that time I thought it was reasonable, and I think we should just move on.
If you'll promise to be short in the future and stay to 2 minutes.
I always do, Jerry.
Can I get head nods on who's okay with 1 minute?
Can I make a comment, please?
So, 1 second. So,
Mayor?
go ahead, Councilwoman.
Thank you very much. It's a part of a, for lack of a better word, kind of fun part or informative part of what we're doing outside of council. And sometimes there's a lot of events and things that we attend that may take more than a minute or so just to even casually talk about, and even in a hurry. And then there are other times, like me, where I don't even say anything. So I would really appreciate having the leeway of having up to 2 minutes. Whether I use it or not, I think it would be my preference, but I would like to leave it there because I don't want the audience or the public to think we're just racing through these things as if they're not of any import. So I would appreciate leaving it at 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. So, for 1 minute, I have, Hannah, I know you support that. Anybody else support the idea of 1 minute? 2 minutes sounds like a reasonable, okay. All right.
Okay, I do request, Jerry, I request that you do gavel at the 2 minutes. Boom.
Yes. Once again, in the interest of time, I think it would make sense if we jump to Chapter 8, which is the Code of Ethics. I know this is where there's been a lot of sort of different points of view and some pain points there. So I'd like to turn to that section and begin that discussion because I think that's going to take probably the rest of our meeting.
It will, but the prelude to that is 7.8. 7.8 sets the stage for 8, 9, and 10 by saying that we will be in accordance with state law.
Okay. All right. Who would like to kick off discussion on that? Vice Mayor?
All righty. So Section 8, as we all are very well aware, the past few years on all the political sides, there's been a significant amount of ethics complaints. One of the issues that I've identified is that, frankly, the Code of Ethics, if you really think about it, isn't very clear. It's very easy for anyone to say anyone was not ethical under these standards. Okay, so an example. Recognize that the chief function of local government is at all times to serve the best interests of all the people. Of course it is. We all agree with that. How do I prove that you're not recognizing that? If I want to complain about someone, I can say that anyone's not recognizing that. They made a vote that I disagreed with, so it's not in the interest of all the people. I'm the people. And so that's just one example. But on a broader perspective, we've accidentally dug ourselves a hole, and I'm not pointing to anybody, it's both sides. We've dug ourselves a hole where anybody can say anybody violated the code of ethics, and meanwhile, we're spending a significant amount of money on these complaints. Actually, shout out to Paul for the assist. Fiscal year 24, we spent $10,554 on the processes of these complaints, and that's money that could have gone to streets. That's money that could have, helped with our staff. We do, cost of living adjustments with each budget. At some point, we gotta care about these kind of smaller dollar amounts. And on top of that, these complaints take up a significant amount of staff time, staff stress, because council members get passionate and, somewhat understandably so, passionate about the issue, and they feel the need to come talk to staff while it's still in the process, and I find that very inappropriate. So any of these suggestions that you're seeing on the 3 pages, it's coming from the stance of trying to tighten this up while still allowing the public to hold us accountable, because that is so important. And when we go into, if it's okay, I'm gonna skip ahead because it is all connected. If we go into 10.4, you'll note that what's in red, it would be keeping our same process. Now, it's come to my attention that this process is opening us up to this ability to council members involving themselves in the process, whether it's intentional or not. And in order to clean that up, I really strongly suggest, actually, that we change how these complaints are handled almost entirely. When a member of the public has an issue and believes that the ethics code has been violated, and I believe with trimming it down as I did in section 8, that it's gonna make it a little less broad of a window where it's really you're doing something unethical as a council member. If a member of the public submits that complaint, I would actually suggest that we, and maybe this becomes a separate agenda item, we can pass what we talked about today, but maybe as a separate one, I think we need to look at language to mirror partially what Gilbert did in 2021. Now, nobody panic, because I'm going to explain the full thing. In 2021, Gilbert was having a similar issue as we were. They passed that the complaint, if not supported by a majority of council members, would be dismissed. I don't like that. That would then depend on who the majority is. I don't think that that would be ethical. Ironic. Instead of that, I would suggest that instead of making our staff be in the middle of this, when someone submits an ethics complaint, it's presented to the council. If 2 council members put their name to it, we send it on to that other attorney. It's 2 council members putting their name to, I believe this has grounds, I believe this has teeth. I want us to hear more. At that point, that's when we send it off, because I'm sorry, but my heart's breaking for Aaron here, because he's been kind of put into the middle of a big political battle.
May I speak?
Just one moment after Councilman Watts.
I think that I'm going to throw a big rock into a small pond. And I really think that we've got a couple of options. While I agree with Vice Mayor Toth, in general, Section 8 is kind of real nice to have, and it kind of gives a general direction for guiding light. 9 has a couple of incidentals. 10 has the meat and potatoes of what we really need to do. And the ambiguity in 10 is disturbing because there are no definitive, if you do this, this is the punishment, this is the sanction, whether it's a slap on the wrist, whether it's, you're incarcerated for a year, whatever it may be, there's nothing definitive. So my suggestion really is one of a couple. We either eliminate Section 10 in total, and then let whomever wants to file the effectively an ethics complaint, let them sue us. That's one. We can refer to the state's attorney general for their adjudication. and looking at it to see whether or not it has merit or not. We can follow a similar process to what the state Congress does, what the Senate and the House does, which is we can refer it to an ethics committee. That may be a little bit of a loaded question. Or hang on, Aaron, here it comes. We can give it to Pierce Coleman and say, you design and make recommendations for here are the violations and here are the sanctions that are applicable, so there's no ambiguity in what we want, what happens if we do something that is perceived to being an ethics violation. So there's a kind of 4 solutions to what is a setup between 8 and 9 a little bit. And I think if we move forward with one of those, I'd really like to see Pierce Coleman do it. I'd really like to see, here's very clearly what ethics violations are. And it can't be ticky-tack stuff about calling people names and that, you know, sticks and stones. I'm tired of that. So it's really, did you really have an ethics violation? Did we have a committee of sorts that reviewed it? But Pierce Coleman has to step up and say, here's what we're going to do first and foremost. Saying, here's the violation, here's the sanctions.
Can I respond to that? Absolutely. Theoretically, so you presented 4 options. One, there's no cause of action anyways for violation of an ethics code. So even if we eliminated the whole thing, someone can file a lawsuit, it'll get tossed immediately because there's no statutory cause of action for that or a common law cause of action for that. Secondly, I don't know that the Attorney General's office would even process anything like this. So that's same thing. They're going to pitch it and say, I don't care. It's your local ethics code, right? Deal. The third option that you proposed was an ethics committee. Maybe. Depends on how you compose your committee. Depends on who's sitting. Depends on where allegiances and alliances are, right? So that could be a little bit loaded like you suggested. The fourth option of having the town attorney's office do it is a viable option. But if that's the option that you go with, I have rules that I need to put into place for how this is going to look. So I'm fine exploring that, but once we make recommendations with what the council will adopt, right, about what examples of things, because these are all aspirational, like you suggested, Councilman. You can't pick every example of what could potentially violate the code of ethics. If we put in language that say, not in the determination of the town attorney, non-serious or, you know, minimal violations, you know, aren't going to be referred out. Here are illustrative examples of the things that will be referred out. Then if everyone agrees to abide by that, I don't have a problem with it. The problem historically, to be real frank with you all, is that not everyone's okay with abiding by what Pierce Coleman's determination is, right? And so if you and your constituents can be okay with that, then that's certainly what we're willing to do, and we will do as the council's directed. Up to this point, we have encountered serious issues with it. So I would need a commitment. That's what I'm trying to say.
I think that my biggest concern is that verbiage like spirit, that is so, who knows what that means?
Right.
You know, if
Yep.
I'm in church, it means one thing, and if I'm on the street, it means something else.
Yep.
So it's all, taking away all that ambiguity to me, and all I'm suggesting is that Pierce Coleman take the first step.
Good.
First strike and say, here's what we suggest, and now let's tweak it. Let's see what we can live with as a reasonable council and say, here's the infractions, but they have corresponding sanctions. You can't just say that because somebody called you a name, that you get to sanction them for a year. You can't do that. That's ridiculous.
Sure.
So those types of things, and I think you taking the first stab at it, Pierce Coleman taking the first stab at it would serve us all well. And understanding 8 and 9, there's some things in there we got to
Sure.
adjust a little bit.
And in response, Mayor and Councilman, in response to that, that's something that we can absolutely do, and that explains a little bit better for my understanding, that you're trying to put some effectively put a framework up there that says, you know, for violations of this nature, this would be something that's within the realm of an appropriate consequence or an appropriate sanction. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's correct.
That's fine. Ultimately, that's of course your call.
Mm-hmm.
You have to pick the level of proportionality, right, as the
Right.
as the legislative body.
I find it hard to find an argument for not doing something like that because of that ambiguity that's in 10. It's pervasive in there. It's everywhere. So, and the other nice part is that if we agreed on that, we could eat lunch. Thank you.
I have a comment, please.
Can we go first?
Oh,
Just one second, Councilwoman. I have the Vice Mayor, I have Councilwoman Earl, and then our Mayor lined up.
I just wanted to voice that I agree with Councilmember Watts on that. I think that for Section 8 and 10, I would like to refer that out. The one request I would have on sanctions for when Pierce Coleman is doing this, I want to clarify, I really want impose any other sanction in accordance with state law to be removed, because the any other sanction means that anything that the state legislature hasn't thought of us doing to each other yet, we can technically do. And
But that's why they do a draft, and then we negotiate
Right.
the draft.
that was just my one note, that I do want it to be very clear of what the sanction is for each thing. So I can understand the temptation to include like or any other such sanction, but just don't put that language in, please. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to take the rock out of the pond and drain it. I would like to eliminate having these ethics violations or sanctions, the stuff here altogether, and just have in there that if anybody has a complaint, they can either email us, they can do a recall, they can come to a call to the public. That'll save us any extra money. It will also save time of the staff and the attorney's office. That's my take on it.
I don't disagree with that. And so my question for Rick was, are you talking about eliminating 10 and just doing it through Pierce Coleman?
No, I think there has to be some guidelines. I think the public deserves some guidelines as to what is an ethics violation and what is not. So I think keeping 10, but having more specificity to it makes a lot of sense to me. So no, I want to keep 10, but I want to keep it more factual rather than emotional.
Hang on just a second, Vice Mayor. Let me have the Councilwoman chime in. Go ahead, Councilwoman McMahon.
hi. This is an interesting topic, I think, for all of us, because I think we're all feeling the dissension, and there's been a lot of complaints filed, et cetera, and it's been pretty much interrupting how the council comes together and how we do our job and how staff does their job. And it's been really, really unfortunate. You know, and seeing some of the complaints, like Aaron said, some of them are just, you know, they don't even, it puts him and even the town manager in a very difficult place to process them or call and say it really doesn't really have any merit, et cetera. Because people are mad at the town attorney or they're mad at the town manager. It's been difficult, and we're all feeling it. I know that Chandler does not allow ethics complaints, and they don't allow them for that reason, and they don't allow them for staff time, and they don't allow them because it's just too costly for them to process them. And I think there's a couple other towns that don't have them either. So that's a consideration. If that's not on the table and it would blow the whole community apart, then I'm for, you know, being part of this process lately with Aaron and talking to him, et cetera. I think that having him, since it's coming to him, and he is trying to sort out all these allegations. And what do you do with them? Where do you go with them? Which one do I send out? Which one do I don't? I think for him and for all of us, if we keep ethics complaints in our rules of procedure, then I'd like to see Aaron provide the outline for that and give himself and his firm guidance as well as council as to how are we going to handle this. Bring it back. Let's all discuss it and talk about it. And hopefully we can come to a resolution that's fair and amicable for everybody. And still the question to even not have these, given what's going on in the town and what the result, then, that might be another discussion. I'm not sure. But going back to Section 8, I would like to keep Section 8 in. I think that's fundamental to our rules. I think it provides guidelines. It's ethics. It's what we do, and it's what we've taken our oath for. And it also gives our community a touchstone on how we're supposed to comport and conduct ourselves. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Just for clarification, it is still on the table to potentially, remove the ethics altogether based on what I heard from Councilwoman Earl and the mayor. Is that your first preference, is to remove it? And then if not, work with Pierce Coleman?
Yeah, I mean, I feel funny saying it because there's an ethics complaint against me. So I don't, and there's ethics complaints out there. So then those would have to be dealt with, if it's decided we're no longer going to continue them. I mean, maybe we just need to sit down. I mean, no, we're having a conversation now, but maybe we all had to take some time to think about that and then have the conversation, maybe after lunch or another time. I don't know.
Okay. I have a lot of lights on. We have the vice mayor, followed by Councilman Watts, and then Councilmember Calvinakis.
It's my turn with the rock. I agree, actually, that removing this process is, it would be a completely valid thing to do. There's nothing, as Aaron, you mentioned, there's not actual legal teeth to like an ethics code or a violation. We kind of created that on our own. I do, however, believe in the public's ability to hold us accountable, and I believe that that's important. That might just come from shifting the mindset of what that accountability means. We have the call to the public, we have our email, we have, if we really mess up, you can sue us. We have current state law, But my point is, you can do a recall. You can, at the end of the day, the best way for the people to show accountability is at the ballot box, and not necessarily by recall, but at the next election. That's what most municipalities honor. So I'm for that. If we have 4 that are interested in that, I would therefore, I guess, rescind my suggestions for 8 and 10, and we can leave 8 in as a reminder of how we need to be behaving, and I think it is important to have us all sign that, but
Well, and Mayor, sorry to interrupt the 2 council members that are waiting to speak, but it's really no different from like an attorney code of ethics. There are some things that are binding and that you must abide by. You can't have conflicts of interest. You can't dual represent without a client's consent, right? But there are other things that are, we call them aspirational, right? You shall aspire to serve the community at large. You shall aspire to do these things. And the state bar is never going to come after me for, in their view, either not doing well enough or doing too much or one way or another, right, with respect to that. So I view this very similarly. There may not be grounds for a complaint process for it, but is there accountability at the end of the day? If you choose not to abide by those things, sure, right? For an attorney, I lose clients if I choose not to abide by those things. If it's a council member, you lose a council seat if you choose not to abide by those things in the public's view. So ultimately, I potentially agree with that maybe accountability, it just looks different, right?
Yeah. Is somebody in line? Can tell me when I can speak, when it's my turn. Thanks.
Okay, just a second.
Well, that's a lot of food for thought. It really is,
Yeah.
because I can see going both ways, either having
Right.
something that is more definitive or having nothing and then deferring to the state. But I also want to remind everybody that we're using Pierce Coleman by name by Aaron. We're looking to Aaron's cohorts, their staff, and those people have the objective expertise that we're looking for, that if we can come up with definitions and we can come up with specific sanctions, then we don't negate the voice of the public. And I think
Right.
my bigger concern is the impression that we give to the public and saying, you no longer have a voice, an easy voice for you to express your concern, either a complaint or an email or so on. So I just ask that we consider that, because I'd love to get rid of it, but the optics there are somewhat bothersome.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I concur with the vice mayor and with Gail on kind of going with the Chandler model, which is just the elimination of these sections. I really appreciate their respect for staff, their respect for what's been going on lately in the town, and it's gotten out of hand. Like Aaron pointed out, there are remedies. If for self-enrichment, we could find ourselves in court for egregious violations of just decorum. You know, we could be recalled. There could be letter writing campaigns. There are self-correcting mechanisms that are at play, other than just filing 15 ethics complaints in 2 years. And so I concur with both of them. And I think, Jerry, I think I heard you say the same thing. I think this is an excellent conversation, a reasonable conversation, and one that I think it's tough, with all due respect to Councilmember Watts, on the optics of people not having a conduit. But it's kind of, I think we're at the point enough's enough. And let's just fix it and move on.
I'm going to pick on Councilmember Kalavianakis. The egregiousness, the term, what is it? How blatant is it? How much in your face is it? And I think that's the problem. If you're going to get rid of it, then fine. But if you keep it, you need to put some teeth around whatever those terms are, those definitions are, or they're going to be pointless. We're going to be back in the same conundrum we're in right now. So I'm going to continue to hammer optics, what the public has gotten used to. I don't really want to lose that. I don't think the public wants to, but I think we have to find a way to streamline that process, look and see what's frivolous and what's not. And we can do that by identifying those and then saying, does it meet the criteria? And if not, they still come back to council. They still come back and we still talk about them. We still have a vote. And we don't disrupt the optics to the population.
I don't disagree with you, Rick, but we have town business to run. And I think we really need to get back to that. There's been a big distraction with this stuff. And that conduit or the drain, whatever you want to call it, it's pretty plugged up right now. And I think we need to clean it out.
Comment? Can I just comment?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You know, I think this is a great conversation we're all having, and I think we all have really good points. And I'm going to probably present this to Aaron and everybody, but, I haven't given a lot of thought to not having ethics complaints, so to speak, and I'd like some time to think about that. And I would also, if that's possible, I mean, we're not voting on this now, we're providing direction, but at the same time, I agree with Rick Watts. There's so many people out here that pay attention and to all of our conducts and want to have a say-so in that. So maybe, and we can have Aaron provide an outline of what it would be if this was kept, or maybe even if it's not kept and we get a letter from somebody complaining about something or whatever, then, hand it over to Aaron or whatever, and whatever, see if it matters or needs a vote or something. I'm not making sense, but I just think I'd like to have the options in front of me to see if we consolidate it down to a smaller level, for lack of a better word, and more concise, or if we just decide to do away with it.
One more comment about Pierce Coleman, and I think that if we move forward with saying here are sanctionable events, then you have to be, Pierce Coleman has to be the determinant. You have to make the decision.
Right.
And even if we stay with a email, you have to make that determination. And if you determine that it has some viability, then it comes to council. But as much as you don't want to be in the middle, you're right smack there.
No, of course. That's the way, I recognize that entirely. I think that what I'm hearing right now is that the best option for us to move forward, Because there's no sense in doing work on narrowing or providing a framework or anything like that if the goal of the council at the end of the day is going to be we eliminate the ethics complaint process in the first place. So I think when this comes back for adoption, the options are, here's all the changes, you can choose to adopt what you want to adopt. With respect to Section 10, council give direction, eliminate in its entirety, or direct Pierce Coleman to put a framework together where he provides structure for sanctions, like Councilman Watts suggested. If you choose to eliminate it on April 15th, then so be it. You don't need to spend any more money on having me do stuff. If you choose to move forward with the framework, then I move forward with providing council additional direction. That would be my suggestion.
And what happens to the existing complaints that are in process? They are suspended, they are,
That's up to you.
okay? Because there is some angst there. And,
Yep.
you know, a lot of this is, you know, and I know this is client privilege stuff, but it's like when I was interviewed, some of it was really ticky-tack. And it doesn't make any sense whatsoever to me. And if you haven't got thick enough skin to put up with some of the things that then it gets kind of silly. And the silliness has got to stop. You know, if you've got something that is legitimate, that's different. Now define legitimate, and I'll say the same thing. Legitimate versus egregiousness, it's the same lack of definition.
Yep.
So I'm good with either way. I just want to make sure that either way, we do what's in the best interest of the public.
Yeah,
All
can
right.
I comment, please?
Well, just one moment. We're at 12:20. So I'd like to move towards wrapping up by 12:30, just again, for everybody to have a break. We have another meeting starting promptly. So if there's any final discussion on this or any other direction based on any other
Yes.
changes, and then
Yes.
I would like to find out if you'd like to have another work session to review this again in a more cleaned up process, or if you're ready for it to be agendized for further discussion at a council meeting.
Well, excuse me, I need clarification, and I need people to think about this because it's important moving forward for existing complaints. If this is wiped out, do they get wiped out or what? I think that's important, especially for the people that have complaints against them.
You tell me, it's your process.
Well, I know that, but it has to be discussed.
Go for it.
As far as I'm concerned, I don't think we need another work session. I think, Aaron, you just hit it right in the head. Just give us those two options of doing it internally through Pierce or just eliminating it, and then we can decide at a future council meeting. And I think we've talked about it enough. And as far as just being up to this council, how we go forward, I'd be, willing to say that let's just clean sweep and just start anew. And, from what Rick said and for the ethics complaints that are out there right now, if you guys want to start all over again, that's fine with me with the new rules in order.
Well, and I will say, I'll add that, let's talk about the elephant in the room. There are 3 council members right now that have ethics complaints pending against them from both sides of the political aisle. So if you choose to do a clean sweep, it will be a clean sweep for everybody. And so no side benefits over the other. If you choose to leave them in place, we're leaving them in place for everybody. That would be my counsel to you, or recommendation to you as your town attorney. You can't be selective.
So in that light, I'm gonna agree. Let's wipe it out. Let's wipe out the existing sanctions. Let's all grow up and address these things as they are brought to us, but let's move on from here so we can actually get something done.
Okay?
And I don't know if that's a motion or not, but it sounded like it to me.
It's certainly direction that I will take.
It is direction.
Being that we do have a bill to the attorney that's working on 2 of them right now, I would like to know the outcome of those.
Sure.
We've already spent that, but
Yes, those that have already left will complete the process.
yes. But the
Those-
ones that didn't go out yet, if we decide to wipe it, then we wipe them.
Okay.
Well,
Is that what we're saying?
That's not what I heard we were saying at all. It's either a clean sweep is a clean sweep. You eliminate them all, or you hear them all. I think that's what you said.
Well, my
That
recommend,
would be the,
that's.
that would
one-
be the only fair way to do it, is the clean sweep is you eliminate them all, or we process the current ones that are in the queue and then we start anew with the new council recommendations.
There are two that are in process that some or most of you have been interviewed about already, right? And those are the ones, Gail, that you're talking about. There are others, one pending against the mayor and one pending, and a couple pending against Councilmember Calvinakis, that are paused, that have been administratively paused. How you direct us to proceed is entirely up to you. I will call, upon direction, I will call the investigator today and tell her to stop work, don't bother putting a report together for any of the existing ones. If you decide that the ones that are in process are going to continue, I will not take any further action with the investigator, and I'll let the reports come out. But if you choose to do a clean sweep, I would recommend that it be a clean sweep.
Would it be reasonable to look at the ones that have been paused, if we wiped out 10 in total, but the ones that have been paused, if Pierce Coleman could make a determination based upon, and support it in some manner, is that
I
possible?
made my determination. I sent them out.
Oh,
for
you did?
investigation. Yes.
I wasn't sure what.
They're
but
paused right
paused.
now. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's what I'm saying. If you choose to sweep the ones that are paused, my recommendation is you sweep them all, including the ones that she started investigating. Because if we're really gonna grow up and put it behind us, they all need to go. Because if we're talking about ticky-tackness, I'm looking at every single one of those and seeing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
All right, on that note, it is 12:26. I think we have a lot of direction. If there are any other comments or thoughts about the other edits that are in this that we did not cover, please reach out to me directly.
Yeah, so what am I doing?
Yes, well, I'm gonna say, I thought we were gonna bring it back to, sounds like we're ready to bring it back to council. At least that was what I heard from you, Brenda. Are we ready to do that? To bring back a version, and then at that meeting,
Well, yeah, I think there's two issues, existing complaints and then going forward with either another work session, or not. I think, so right now, there's two issues that are pending.
I see two issues being, one, is it gonna be a complete wipeout of 10? And then what do we do with or not, and then what do we do with specific sanctions, specific violations or citations, whatever you call it. And then sanctions, and then the pending, so you've got issue over here going forward, and issue over here in arrears.
By the way, it sounds like we don't need another work session. It sounds like we're ready to come back. Okay, so that's taken care of.
all right, so shall we just do
Let's roll.
a quick rundown?
Yep.
All right. Councilman Watts, do you mind if I start with you?
Oh, sure. At the beginning of this, I thought it would be easier to do the violations and sanctions, and now I'm not so sure. So I think I would go for wiping it out and following up with the residents saying, this is what you got to do when you complain. You got to go to the individual council members. So I'm in support of wiping it out. And in conjunction with that, I'm in support of wiping out the sanctions as well. All existing sanctions.
And existing complaints?
Existing complaints and sanctions, right. And by that, to be clear, I know it's coming up on the next agenda, but Skillicorn sanctions are going to go away too, because if it all goes, not just the existing ones.
I agree with that. Oh, I'm sorry, you were gonna.
That's okay. Well, I started with Councilman Watts. I don't mind if you want to, do you want to put your 2 cents in?
Is it okay?
Sure.
Thank you. I agree with what Councilman Watt said, and here's why. My original suggestions that I put in already made it so that even if anybody had come back and it was not guilty, but it was a violation, the sanctions in there would have at most gone up to the next meeting. It would have been the worst thing we can do is keep you from going to the next meeting. What happened a year ago was a wish list of things that were completely unprecedented. I'm all for a clean slate, but I agree, we need to put our money where our mouth is. If we want a clean slate, let's make it a clean slate. I'm all for calling the investigator and saying, hey, we're done, we're stopping, we'll pay you for the labor you put in, but we're not doing this anymore. But I want a commitment that we're actually putting this behind us.
Brenda?
I'm for Operation Clean Sweep, okay? And I think Rick was too. As far as the Skillicorn sanctions, it's the utmost of ridiculousness to say that it's going to affect sanctions that were done a year ago, because in other words, we're going to be eliminating every ethics complaint in the history of this town by going back to his. Well, then how about Allen Magazines? And how about any other council member that served that did get jammed up with sanctions? So this is really an apples and orange situation. Allen was found guilty. The sanctions were imposed. So going forward, it's on pending sanctions, not somebody who's already been found guilty of ethics violations. So that should be another meeting. It's already been slated to be on the agenda. I suspect that his sanctions will be lifted at that time, but I do want a roll call vote at that time to determine who is for lifting his sanctions and who is not for lifting his sanctions. And so this body will have a vote, and it's probably going to be at the next council meeting. And so I think it's kind of unreasonable.
Well, thank you, Councilwoman Kalavianakis, because you just made me change my vote. I think we should go forward with those that are in the queue and deal with them, and going after that, then it should be a clean sweep.
And in terms of you're for removing the
I'm
chapter?
100% for removing Chapter 10.
Okay, thank you.
Out of the, history of the town of Fountain Hills ethics violations, how many have sanctions that still exist? I assume people out of office don't, right?
As far as I know.
Okay. Has anyone in the history of our town had sanctions that lasted over a year?
Not that I'm aware of.
Would we say that a flood of ethics violations occurred beginning with what happened with Skillicorn? You don't have to answer that, Rachel. I'm not going to make you answer that, but I'm letting people think about it. The goal of this is to put something behind us. And I'm all for it. And I'm reaching out my, olive branch. And I would just like the public to take note of who's politically slapping it away.
All right, so I've heard from, you three have heard from the vice mayor. Alan, do you have any input on which version of this you'd like to see move forward?
Probably could eliminate 10. One thing that is interesting to take a look at, just look up the rules in the United States Congress and legislative immunity. Read that section, and it's quite telling that the freedom of speech is more important than people's feelings.
All right, and then Councilmember McMahon, did you have any?
She's off.
Oh,
She
okay.
dropped off.
Okay, and then Mayor, you're the final.
I'm for eliminating, but as far as the vote on my outstanding ethics complaint, I don't know if I should weigh in on that, because I don't know what that would appear to the public. So I think the others have spoken loud and clear, so you have the direction.
Okay.
And I would support that direction, but however, I won't have a say in it.
My interpretation of that direction is that I'm going to contact the investigator, like, right after lunch and tell her to stop work and don't produce any reports that we're done. That's
what I
my
have.
interpretation of the council's direction. Is that correct?
My understanding with that interpretation is that then we also drop Alan Skillicorn sanctions.
And therefore remove it from the upcoming agenda, is that correct?
If we had that direction today, yes, we would remove it from the agenda.
That's my direction.
Done.
Okay. All right, with that, it is 12:34. That is
Let's eat.
That's what I just heard. Okay. So I didn't hear any objections, yeah. Okay, so you're objecting,
I think that the next meeting we should discuss the Allen with going sanctions, like it's been agendized, and if it's put on future business.
Okay, I need final direction, guys, on what we're going to do.
What do you want to do, Rick?
I'm the one that made the motion, vote whatever it was.
Yeah, he said that he wanted to go, but, okay.
So I said yes, get rid of 10, get rid of all sanctions, including the ones that are.
So this is specific to wiping all and removing any other sanctions that are in place, period, regardless of who they're against.
The only one that is affecting you is Councilman Scope.
So I have two that want to do that. Brenda, you've opposed. Oh,
Three
three.
with Watts.
Okay, I want to make sure I heard you. Mayor, do you want to chime in? Say, I'm going to need a tie break here, or I need a
I
majority.
would not be opposed to dropping his sanctions. And Brenda, the difference is he's still serving on the council. Allen Magazine isn't. So there is a big difference there. And you know what? He's had these sanctions for over a year. I think that's time served.
Well,
And if we're going to move on, we really need to move on.
Well, I don't think sanctions are forever, and if Allen Magazine were to run again for council or for mayor, it would say he
No.
ethically
No.
compromised.
He had
still-
ethics violations against him, and he ran again and was still elected.
He was still
And-
elected, but he was still guilty of ethics violations.
Respectfully, I think there's been a misunderstanding. The sanction is the punishment for the violation. The violation still occurred. So referring to Councilmember Magazine, his sanction was an apology I never received. So I guess technically you could say it's still active because I'm still waiting on it, but
Here's the deal, we're not gonna need to do anything. If you eliminate section 10, which was the basis for the sanctions, they all go away by de facto. All right, they're all going away then. That's the direction.
All right. Please join us for lunch. It's in the back. See you in 25.